Angular is a JavaScript language, so it's like jQuery and just straight JavaScript. The difference is that, at least in my opinion, it's far more efficient when it comes to making it do similar things that you can do in jQuery or with JavaScript. There seems to be less scaffolding that you have to build up around the language. It's easy to read, so it's less complex to do similar things that you can do in jQuery and in JavaScript. And we're going to see particularly how to get Angular to interact with .NET. So what we get out of this is that we've got a very efficient client-side language that you might even want to start using in place of jQuery and JavaScript. Now, those two, of course, have their places in specific types of tasks, but you may find you can make use of Angular in a lot of the places where you did with jQuery and JavaScript. So not only do we get this powerful client-side language, but we're also going to see how to make it interact with .NET. So within the cases that you want to just do something on the client side that doesn't require any back-end code, any .NET code behind, that's where you're using your client-side languages, and we're going to see how to do that with Angular. And then there are the instances where you have to interact with .NET. We're also going to see how to do that with Angular. So talking about the architecture of Angular, Angular has a concept of modules, and modules basically allow you to package the different components of Angular into one space. And you can use several modules in an application, so it keeps things compartmentalized, basically, is what it does. I'm about to discuss controllers and services, and modules allow you to group your controllers and any custom services that you build into a module. Now in this course, we're not really going to be building out modules. We're just going to use one module, kind of the default module, to create our application. But just remember, they're like a box that you can put all your Angular pieces in and use throughout your application when you're building a larger application. Now in this course, the application is extremely simple, so we don't need the additional extension that modules might provide us and the additional organization that they might provide us, because we're just not going to be building that big of an application. Controllers are very similar to ASP.NET MVC controllers. This is where we put our communication between the view and our back-end code, which Angular usually likes to put inside of services. However, it's very common to put a lot of logic inside of the controller, and then if you want, you can extend services or create your own services. Now in this course, we're not going to be creating services. We will be using services as a utility to help us accomplish certain kinds of tasks. And in regards to file structure, the controllers usually go into a JavaScript file, and we're going to start off doing that. However, because we start interacting with .NET code very closely with our Angular, we're actually going to have to move up into our CSHTML to gain access to .NET functionality. Angular accomplishes a lot of its concise syntax using directives. So a directive is something like an ng-hide or ng-click or ng-model that you put onto an HTML tag. So it's similar to an attribute onto an HTML tag. We're going to get really familiar with those. Directives are also a key component of why Angular is so much easier to read compared to, say, jQuery or JavaScript. Angular is largely a declarative-based language, meaning you add these ng-attributes to your HTML tags. You basically decorate these HTML tags with these attributes, versus where in JavaScript or jQuery, it's imperative. It's an imperative-based language, so you're typing your code in. So if you're familiar with .NET's WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, a lot of it is declarative-based, where you're decorating the tags versus typing out your code and using equal signs and semicolons, and it's a lot more verbose when you're in the imperative world versus when you're in the declarative world. It's extremely concise and expressive at the same time. So That's just a reason why Angular is more concise versus jQuery or JavaScript. It's declarative versus imperative programming. Two directives that we're going to use are ng-app. So you need an ng-app on your highest node. So you might put this on the body tag. You might put it on the HTML tag inside of your HTML file, or in our case, we're going to be using this in our CSHTML files. ng-controller allows you to compartmentalize your CSHTML file into different areas. So you may have 3 controllers and they're all very specific. So you can use those 3 controllers in 3 areas inside of the CSHTML. What they do is they provide scope. So you might have a controller working the top half of the page and then a controller working the bottom half of the page. Now for us, we're just going to use one controller because we're trying to keep things fairly simple as we're learning how to use Angular.